Caz Myers, welcome to the lockdown sessions.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me to join you.
Oh, well, it's my pleasure. Now, we were just joking before, but you are actually an award-winning interior designer. Now you run your company out of London, right? So you're London-based.
London-based company, but we do interior design all over the world and everywhere, not just in London.
I'm just suddenly thinking we're kind of almost jumping straight into a first question, but wow, how's the pandemic worked for your business? Because that must be a high-touch business.
Yeah, I mean, the first lockdown was quite different because all our contractors stopped on site. So that was a little bit of a shock to the system of, I've always run my business from home. My studio is at home and all the people I work with are remote. So this way of working has worked well for us because that's how we've always set up the business. I've been working that way. It's nearly 12 years old now, which makes me feel very grown up saying that.
Yeah.
And so the first lockdown was strange because it was a bit like, right, hang on a minute, how are we going to deal with this? Because none of our projects are on site. So a lot of the first lockdown was about planning. We were fortunate to be able to be in the process of starting a new project. So we just literally spent 3 or 4 months just planning it, which actually we don't have the luxury of time usually because we're normally juggling. So we were doing that with 2 or 3 projects. Since then, I can proudly say we have been very fortunate and we have worked all the way through. It's not been full capacity, but we've kept it going. We've finished 3 full projects all through the last year. And I think I could speak for most interior designers. The most frustrating thing is we're only as good as our portfolios, but we haven't been able to photograph anything. And that's actually the thing I found the most challenging because, you know, we're all on Instagram, we're all trying to find quirky things to post. And it's like, well, how long can we do this for? Because actually we're only as good as the work that we do. So lockdown obviously has been challenging in many ways, but work has kept me going. We've kept a routine. We've had slightly shorter days. We've worked generally till 2, 3 o'clock rather than sort of 5, 6 o'clock. The difference has been is my main colleague lives in the Isle of Wight. So she's been stuck there. I say stuck, she sees the sea every day. But normally we meet every week in London, both on site and at my home studio. So that lack of interaction has been really weird. We've done everything online and on the phone. So, you know, we're very creative in what we're doing. And to do that on the phone, as opposed to being next to each other and near each other and interacting, we've just made it work, but it's been different. Everyone's found their own way of working, right?
Well, for sure, right? And I think if you're set up to do it virtually before it hits, you were well placed to be able to survive and thrive.
Yeah.
And clearly, the way you're set up, because you're working on other people's side, actually, you don't need a big office hub. You can work remotely. It makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've always thought, oh, shall I get a studio? Because there is something about bouncing ideas and being next to each other. But we do a work together Wednesday, so where we kind of work together on a Wednesday, which obviously we haven't been doing that. And then at least once or twice a week, we've had site meetings. So there's still that interaction. And I think the other thing that we've utilised is, which obviously we will again, is these kind of pop-up workspaces. Because there's just no need for us to have a studio. I've got a garden studio in my garden that's my library of kind of fabrics and flooring and tiling and you name it, I've got it. And everyone that works with me, you know, can come and go with a key and use that as and when they want. But yeah, look, we were lucky, and obviously I didn't set it up with a view to a pandemic. I just set it up in a way that worked for me, and I'm a mum and I'm flexible and I have kids, so it worked for me in that way as well. So we have been really fortunate. We have been really fortunate.
Out of interest, how have you kept sane with 2 school-age kids?
Well, that's actually a very good question. So there's been days where I'm working on my bed.
Right.
There's been days where I've been sitting in lessons and pausing my work for a couple of hours while I've sat in, you know, back at school.
Right.
There's been days where I've been on the phone to my clients while seeing my son on the PS4 pretending that he's in a meeting at school. I've had teachers ring me while I'm in the middle of a meeting saying, Caz, is your Wi-Fi working today? And I said, yes. And they said, oh, really? Because, you know, your son suddenly left his lesson. And then I go and find him on the PS4. So just like many other parents, it's been very, very challenging. And whilst it was also quite lovely having them at home, I have two kids, one's 15 and one's 12. We kind of met at lunchtime, and you know, I couldn't keep up with the snacks, so I couldn't keep up with the shopping, and just the kind of the mental health. Do you want to go for a walk? No. Will you get dressed? No. Because they didn't have to have their cameras on, so it was that sort of lackluster. I think we all got lackluster. It made me get definitely lazier. And I do boxing with my personal trainer. So I've been doing that 3 times a week all through lockdown, or the times where we were allowed to meet one other person. And I'd sometimes say to the kids, do you want to come? And they'd look at me like I was an absolute nutter. Yeah. Like, why would I get out of my onesie? So yeah, look, I can't imagine having very young kids at home. But the first lockdown where there was no online was, I'd say, definitely the most challenging, because I was teaching and attempting to teach. And I think as a parent, a working parent, like most people, I decided to pick my battles. So seeing my son on the PS4, I just thought, you know what, I'm just busy. I'm just not going to deal with that right now. We'll talk about it later.
We'll do that another day.
Exactly.
But I do think there is that, you know, for young kids, actually all kids, connection is really important, especially teenage years, right? I mean, it must be fairly challenging for them not to
really hard.
Their friends.
Really, really hard. I think all the kids I know have really struggled in different ways. You know, the lack of sport, lack of socializing, and you know, my kids have really stuck to it. We've really stuck to the rules. Not everyone's kids are, but on the whole, we have. Sadly, we did lose someone dear to us at the beginning of lockdown, which helped the kids understand how critical it is to really adhere to the rules. Yeah. So, you know, we were bubbled up with another family, so that really helped us through lockdown. You know, we've had discos in the kitchen, we've done karaoke,
I've seen the videos on Insta feed.
Yeah, we've kind of, you just get creative. We've made our own pasta. I got all into cooking and thought I was super mom. You know, they've helped me with some of my work projects, and you know, we've just got through it. And I think, you know, the one thing we have done that's been really good, and actually we still do, is that every mealtime, or every evening mealtime, we all do 3 positives a day each.
Oh, I like that.
It's really helped kind of work out that, you know, not everything, even a bad day, even in lockdown, which we've all had, there's always a positive. Even the tiniest, smallest of things, and we still do it. And sometimes the kids have gone, oh, do we have to? And actually, it's something we've maintained for a year now, and that's been something that I really have enjoyed doing, actually.
I love that. I think that's such a great technique, not just for sort of being grateful for the things that are going well rather than focusing on the negatives.
Yeah.
For your overall mental well-being, to be thinking from a positive framework. I love that.
I mean, I'm definitely a glass. I say glass because I'm from Manchester, not glass.
No, well, actually, you are the first person from Manchester I have allowed on.
Thanks. So nice. I used to think I couldn't be an interior designer because I say bath. And some of my clients look at me like I'm completely like, what?
Yeah, what was it you just said?
I say bath, not bath. Or glass and castle and grass. And my kids don't talk like that, so they think I'm very odd. But yeah, back to the positives, I think it is something that, you know, if they say, well, we've got nothing to say, and I just say, well, just think about anything today it's like a happy moment of any sort. And I think it's kept us all going. And I think the other thing that, you know, has really helped me and them is go a day at a time, because no one can control what's going on. And I think, you know, work, social, everything, we've just gone a day at a time in this household. And I think that's really been important as well.
I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because as someone who runs a business, you'd never consider a day at a time, right?
No, no, but you have to. We've had to in every sense, you know, and you know, I'm lucky in that I've had a routine. I've created a routine, and I think that was important for me, particularly, you know, to keep up my exercise for my own mental health and physical kind of. Obviously, not where like it was before, but just, you know, boxing has been incredible. I've become quite a powerhouse in the park. And I think, you know, trying to instill that in the kids, even though that has not really worked. And, you know, just kind of this walking. And I bought a pair of AirPods, which I didn't own before, and I stick on my music. And actually, I found that just walking to the park, I wouldn't look at my emails, I wouldn't look at my WhatsApp messages, I just listen to my music. It's only 10 minutes, but just things that I've found help clear my brain. And, you know, I do work hard and I do check my emails at night, and I have worked at the weekends, and, you know, but where possible to find those moments of kind of stillness and sanity is, I think, it's been really important.
I was saying to someone the other day that it's really hard to find stillness in a world that values action.
Absolutely, absolutely. But that kind of, that peace and lack of cars and kind of, you know, I'm sure most mums and dads would understand that kind of dropping kids here, there, and everywhere. And, you know, I've actually quite enjoyed not having to do that. And I actually,
Right. Where from Thursday night to Sunday night, you're basically a taxi driver and an ATM machine.
basically, and it's kind of, you think, how did I actually fit my life into my life? Because you just slow down. I mean, you know, I'm in my loungewear from 4 in the afternoon or 5 in the afternoon. I've watched Netflix like every other person, and, you know, you just have to motivate. And some days have not been easy to motivate. You know, it's not all great, but some days you just have to push yourself.
And there is that perspective, isn't there? There always will be. That the problems that you and I are even talking about now, they're first world problems when we worry about
Absolutely.
how many shows shall I watch on Netflix, you know?
Sure.
My mum was sharing with me the other day, like 4 pages. She's been keeping a note of all the movies they've watched during lockdown.
Has she?
She's
Oh,
got like 4 double-sided pages of A4 of films that she's watched. And it's
yeah.
like, great, but you've watched that streaming it on Amazon, Netflix, Sky.
Yeah, I've had some nights where I've watched, I started a series, I watched 6 hours. I've never ever done that in my entire
The Queen's
life.
the Queen's Gambit did that to me, actually.
Same.
I
And
think
I
I
just
watched that
kind of,
all.
yeah. And, you know, it's just been strange, hasn't it? It's just been strange.
But if you look forward,
Yeah.
what do you see as the kind of differences now? Because one of the things I pick up from you, especially when you talk about, you know, when you're with your bubble friends, that actually there's this kind of, there's a human story to the
Mm,
pandemic. There's a government story and all
mm,
the rules and lockdowns and vaccines.
mm,
There's a medical story, and then there's the human story of these, you know, things that where we've all been able to kind of do good things
mm.
for each other.
Yeah, I
Do you
think
see that sticking, or are we just going to go back to?
I think connection is really important. It's really important to me. And the kids as well. And I think that kind of feeling of reconnecting, um, I think it will take time to reconnect because, you know, I think I've certainly become slightly more of a hermit, and I haven't, you know, I've quite enjoyed that sort of peacefulness within the kind of craziness of work. But I think that sort of reconnecting with people, and I think naturally people will go back to quite busy lives quite quickly, because once the kids' activities restart, and obviously them having gone back to school has already kind of upped the ante a little. Um, and just kind of things like traffic. I mean, already in the last few days, the difference, you know, and from today with the new rule of 6, which, you know, it's just going to change that feeling of people outside, and obviously the sun is shining today.
Right, yeah, today the
Big
sun's
difference.
out, so everyone's going to be in good moods.
Exactly.
Um,
But
and
I'd like to think, I don't think as a society we're ever going to be entirely the same again. But I do think in 2 or 3 years, or 3 or 4 years, we'll go, did we really get ordered to stay at home? Like, how did we do that? And it will feel really weird, and it won't feel like we really did it.
we are in year 2 of lockdown.
True.
I remember talking to a 17-year-old that we both know, and I said to
Yeah.
him, what will 2020 represent for him?
Yeah.
And he rather ironically said, that will be the first year of lockdown, Brad, he said.
Yeah, it's true. It is true. I mean, if we knew now, if he would have thought this time last year, we'd be still having these, still be in this conversation.
Well, the last time we actually saw each other live, Caz, so we are friends. We should tell everybody who's listening, go back 30 plus years.
Yeah.
And
Even though we look so young.
I know, well, it's great, isn't it? But the last time we saw each other was actually before my 50th. We went out for dinner in London.
Yeah.
That feels like ago.
Yeah, that feels like so long ago.
Right.
That was in the summer, right? When we were allowed to go out and eat outside.
Yeah, it was just in that sort of end of August, September, October, and then it locked down again.
Yeah.
So that was the last time we saw each other. And I can imagine that for some people, seeing friends is going to be really important.
Yeah.
Going back to work will be different. I wonder, working as an interior designer, you shared some of the design stuff, but you must work with a lot of trades guys.
Yeah.
I wonder, how have they been impacted by this?
I think on the whole, anyone in an industry like mine, like I deal with a lot of trades, I deal with a lot of garden designers, I deal with a lot of contractors, and actually everyone at the moment is so busy. It's obviously gone up and down. I think all the kind of trades, as in my suppliers, like fabric suppliers, product suppliers, obviously they've all found a new way of working, because within all of the mix there was Brexit. So, we get a lot of things from Europe. So that's also been thrown into kind of slight chaos throughout lockdown at the same time. So a lot of our supplies have been much more difficult to get, generally. But actually, I mean, I've still been having some site meetings, only in empty sites where people have moved out. We haven't done any jobs where people are living in the house, or the property. And I've been working with some developers as well. So we're due shortly to do a show flat installation. So obviously they're empty. So I've been lucky in that I've still had some human contact, not as much as normal. And actually I did win one job in the first lockdown, and I've not been to the house. I've done every meeting on Zoom. I've never in my 20 years of being a designer done a project like that. I mean, they did a video of the house, we saw the plans, and every meeting we've had has been on Zoom. So that's weird. That's weird because they don't live in London. So
you've not actually been inside the property?
No. And all our meetings have been on Zoom. So I've not physically even met them in the flesh.
How do you even get to the feel like energy of a place when you're not in it?
Because I'm very good at my job.
but can you put words on it? Because clearly that's what you have to do.
Well, yes, but remember that a lot of the work we do is sometimes they're properties that aren't built. Like one of the biggest projects I've done was a 15,000 square foot house that was a new build. So I couldn't be in that space to design the space. It was all off plans anyway. So it's obviously most properties aren't done in that way. But that, working with property developers where you're off plan, or a new build which is off plan, you just find a way of finding a way to design without being in a space. But yeah, it's more about the client connection actually than the property. Because I am a people's person, and I think a lot of what my role is about is not just the pretty stuff, and I also project manage all the building work, but it's about the clients and client handling, which is a massive part of what I do. And I actually used to work in the theatre industry, in theatre marketing, and the producers were my clients. So the skills translate, and I've been called a therapist. I've been called, you're dealing with people's lives. I'm in people's lives for at least a year, sometimes 2, sometimes 3. You know which side of the bed they sleep on, where they want their underwear kept. It's a very personal, respectful, trusting relationship. So not meeting them and doing it over a computer, that has been strange.
Yeah, but I guess if you're able to create intimacy with people, you can do it online, or you can do it.
You can. It's just different. Again, we've all just found different patterns as well, and all of us have, haven't we, in the way that we've worked. And actually, I think doing things on Zoom, it's in some ways it's so much more productive because you haven't got travel time and all the kind of practicalities. A lot of our jobs aren't in London, so where it would take me a day to get to Berkshire or Nottingham, or I'm doing it in a Zoom call and then I'm finished. So that will be hard to kind of go back from that as well.
Well, I think we're going to move into a hybrid version of lockdown and then something else, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because there is no need. I think a lot of organizations are thinking office space.
What's the point?
I don't know if I'd want to be in commercial property right now, because most organizations have proven they can survive virtually, but that human connection that you've talked about,
important,
critical in your job, actually is critical in every job, right? Because people need to come together.
It's interesting actually, because I live in Crouch End in North London, and there's a new pop-up place about to open, which is in an old, very large plot, a restaurant. And I follow them on Instagram, and I can see already that is going to be huge. And the idea is it's a bit like you would get in the city or in town or in the West End, where it's all going to be very cool, and you can go and have brunches, and you don't have to book, and you rock up, and there's kind of sofas and work desks, and that's the way forward, because we don't need an office, but actually to be able to meet a client and go somewhere like that and have a glass of wine and have a chat, that's the way forward, I think, for a lot of people.
And I can see that even in some of the local government authorities I work with, where they're moving to hub-based offices. Absolutely. Where actually there's only seats for maybe 20 people, and there might be 300 in the organization. And actually you book your time when you want to come in to have that kind of collaboration. Those places are the future. And it's the same in my work, because for me to run a 3-day leadership program would normally require flying leaders from maybe 7 or 8 different countries across a region into one location to spend 3 days in a hotel banqueting room with no windows.
So will you go back to that?
I believe at some point we will, but probably not until the end of this year. So I've got my first workshop booked.
Have you?
Second week of November at Ashridge for the week, a leadership program.
Exciting.
And it's lovely, but the room is huge. So for 20 people, easily socially distanced. Everyone coming would have been months out of their second vaccination jab.
Right.
And the room has 4 double doors that open onto Ashridge open land. So
it's a nice space to be in, and it's open and airy and inspiring.
Across regions, I don't know how quickly that will come back.
Strange. No one knows, right? We don't know. And your job of international travel, who knows when we'll be doing that again.
So when we locked down originally on the 23rd of March last year, that was actually the day I was meant to be flying to Singapore for 2 weeks.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And that was then kind of, postponed till July, in the hope that by July things would be okay. And then obviously British Airways cancelled all their flights, and that was it. I've not done a workshop in-house since August.
Really? I think what this has taught us, though, is just flexibility. We're kind of conditioned in a way where you don't realize that you are, but we just are, and we just have to be flexible. And I'm the sort of person where I do think on my feet, and I am flexible, but I think it's a really important lesson for people that aren't as flexible, that it's just life. These things, I mean, obviously no one would expect something as extreme as this, but you can't always predict, and therefore running a business or a family or whatever, things change, and I think it's a really important skill to be able to adapt to change, and that's taught everyone that over the past year.
It's definitely been a lesson that everyone's been forced to take, and there are still some perhaps who struggle with it. I know what you say is true. It is uncertain, and if you can cope with uncertainty, you are more adaptable. Basically what you've done is you just proved Darwin's theory of evolution, right? It's not survival of the fittest, it's survival of the most adaptable.
It's true. I think that's true. Yeah,
right? It's survival of the most flexible. And actually I think that because of technology, we're able to be this agile, is a corporate word, isn't it, or flexible, adaptable. What about when you look out at your kids and their generation? I've had a 17-year-old come on here and talk about what life's been like. He was very open in sharing that mental health has been the major concern.
I think it's
from afar as a parent.
Yeah, I mean, my own daughter has really struggled. And, I've seen quite a few of my friends' kids struggle with various issues and challenges. And even actually today, my daughter rang me because they break up this week for Easter. And she said, oh, I wish we weren't breaking up, because I'm a bit worried about then we have to start all over again in 2 weeks' time. And they've only just, they've been back, for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And she was incredibly, incredibly anxious about going back to school. But actually, that anxiety may reoccur because they're having a break again. And I think they've just got into the groove, and it's difficult that they have to stop, actually, which of course I understand. The teachers need a break. They've worked incredibly hard. But I think, teenagers, they need each other. They need that interaction. Yeah, they've got their phones, and yeah, they've got social media. But I think, my son, that lack of sport in boys, that inertia has just been a nightmare.
Well, where I live, Caz, young boys don't follow the rules quite as religiously or stringently as perhaps your boy does. And there's definitely not been a lack of football in my local park.
Right, fair enough.
Playing, but I do take your point, because I think that for teenagers, right, the biggest challenge is always the fact that that's the point at which we start to move away from our parents.
Absolutely.
Right, so that we can either go to college or leave home at some point in the future. So from about the age of 14, actually, we need our friends. They become our rock. And if we can't see them and tell them all our secrets, and it's all done virtually, we become that disconnected sort of group of kids.
Yeah, and kind of sit in their bedrooms on their phones, which they do anyway, but at least, they've kind of not, at least they have the option of getting out. I think the fact they've gone back to school these last few weeks is, I've seen such a difference in both my kids. Massive difference. They were both really, really anxious about going back. But I think that, they walk to school, so they've had exercise, they've seen their friends, and just, a bit of routine. It's routine and structure. And, my snap drawer has definitely been untouched, which has been brilliant.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I remember a couple of weeks ago when the kids did go back to school, my next door neighbour's kids were out in the garden that evening, and they were on the trampoline for like 4 hours.
Wow.
Just jumping and playing. They were just wired. They were just
so
happy to be back with their friends. It's like, it just went absolutely crazy.
It's true. And I think, sort of, a lot of my friends' kids are 18, 19, and have turned 18 over lockdown. And I think, that's going to bring a whole set of issues and kind of overexcitement, and young people, and maybe our age too. There's going to be a lot of overexcited people in June when we can meet and
proper go out.
Social, proper out. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Go out.
Yeah.
And I was lucky, because my 50th was in a partial lockdown, but I could travel. So I did get to go away and spend a week in the Highlands and on the Isle of Skye. And I guess part of me thinks, as I listen to you, actually, that it's kind of a watch it and see, isn't it? We have to be cautious, but at the same time, I think we have to be quite hopeful. And this is something I pick up from you as well.
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting. I did my boxing this morning in the park, and as I was doing my boxing, and it's such a lovely day, the guys arrived on a lorry, and they took the things off the top of the basketball nets. And I just said to my personal trainer who I was with, I just said, there's just something, it's just a small act, but it just felt like such a big deal. And it just made me smile this morning. And it was almost like the world was unlifting, and it's just the smallest thing, but to see these things come off these nets to allow kids to just get back to a bit of normal, it just felt like, who would have thought that something as small as that would feel like the most, like, just uplifting feeling. It was really strange feeling. We all stood and watched them. We all watched them this morning. It was amazing.
I hear you. Look, I think the appreciation towards hugging will take on a whole new meaning.
Oh yeah.
In the coming weeks and months.
Definitely.
Although I still get a little bit confused with all the rules, and a little uncomfortable, actually. I've said this on other shows, actually. I'm a little uncomfortable with the kind of, the loss of such freedoms and things like that. But I also sense that, a lot of people have become quite institutionalized. I wondered if, when you look at your friendship groups, or even in some of your work groups, have you seen some people who have actually struggled quite hard? They literally, they went into lockdown and they're not coming out.
I think, look, there's been days where I felt like that, myself. There's been days where someone's wanted to go for a walk and I've just said no, where you just want to retreat. And definitely seeing people, I think is going to feel really exhausting, actually. That effort of kind of talking and conversation, and you're just kind of used to an earlier evening and time on your own or with your kids or whatever, or partners or whatever. But I think, yeah, I mean, my own family live in Manchester. I know we've joked about that I'm from Manchester, but, you know, I've not seen my own family for a year and a half. My kids haven't seen, you know, their grandpa for a year and a half. So it's just all weird, isn't it? So just kind of the act of driving down the motorway in a few weeks' time for one night and I booked an Airbnb for the 13th of April, is going to just, even that is just going to feel weird. Yeah, it's just going to feel weird, and that's for an hour in the garden, you know. So, but having said that, you know, my own family and my dad, he was very nervous about that, and actually at first he said no, he didn't want to meet us in the garden, and I just said, look, you know, you've had your vaccine, but it's time to kind of see the grandkids. So but I think that generation have found it, I'm sure your parents too, I think, you know, very
we've had exactly the same conversation, actually.
Yeah,
we're trying to organize for July. It will be my parents' like 59th wedding anniversary.
Oh wow.
And we're trying to organize, you know, around my sisters who's got a garden that we can all
yeah
for us all to go. Everybody in the family bar the young kids would have been jabbed up,
right, which is amazing,
right? So the whole family over the age of 28 would have been vaccinated.
Wow, and that would be amazing.
But they're nervous.
I think that generation are very anxious. Yeah,
right? Because my parents know a number of people. I mean, more than one hand, I think, of people who lost life to kids.
The same with my family as well. Yeah, I think that generation, they know a lot of people, and therefore they're very nervous. Definitely.
Whereas I seem to know more people my age who have had it, and I know a number of people who had it bad. And even some who were hospitalized and ventilated. But I don't know anyone from my neck of the woods who died and passed away from it. Different kind of expectation.
Yeah.
Caz, look, as we come to the end of this, first of all, thank you so much for coming on, because it's great just to have friends to come and talk. These lockdown sessions have been so interesting because we have people from all different walks of life from all over the world. And listening to your story is interesting for me, because even though it's a completely different field to some of the corporates I might work with, the lessons, the planning, the way you connect and communicate and get things done, actually, I think it's the same as how organizations should work. It's being able to respond to the situation with what you've got and still be able to deliver. It makes me think how we're all a lot more resilient than we think we are.
I agree with that.
You know, until we need to be, we don't even know that we can be.
Agreed. I think most of us, you know, I think we all deserve a pat on the back, you know, all nationwide, really, for getting through this. Yeah, 100%.
I would invite you back for another lockdown sessions, but we've only got a few left before we finish the whole series. So this will be your one and only appearance. But thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you for having me. I hope that I, you know, answered all your questions and that it's interesting for everyone to hear. So thank you.
I'll wait for the feedback. Caz Myers, interior designer extraordinaire.
So thank you, Brad.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.